Now live on the internet. Does everybody feel sophisticated? Welcome to all who are watching and all who are here. So I have to, it's confession time. I was raised in the Church of Rome, so confession is near and dear to my soul. My confession is I come in here scared to death every Sunday. Well, not scared to death, but nervous, a little bit anxious, because I don't sit down during the course of the week and prepare remarks. Now, sometimes I will go and listen to other folks speak about spirituality, and that will trigger ideas, and sometimes I even rip them off for their examples and for their subject matter. And so this week I was feeling not only anxious but guilty. So this week I didn't even find anybody to rip off. So whatever's coming through today, and I hope something comes through, will be because of my surrender to that which knows. Because I often think I know a lot of stuff, and then I get a good look at myself and my life and how I behave and the behavior patterns that find themselves repeating in my life. And I go, well, you may have read a lot of stuff and you may have heard a lot of stuff, but how much of this stuff have you actually incorporated into your life? And then that's when I go to the cat of nine tails, start flogging myself, because it makes my stomach flip sometimes when I observe myself, or I think about what I did yesterday, or what I did earlier today, or what I said, or how I responded in a certain situation. And yet all of the teachers that I've ever come across understand this phenomenon, point to this phenomenon, and all have said the same thing about this phenomenon, which is, don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself. You're human. You are spirit, experimenting with being in a meat suit, navigating density and time. You have no instruction manual. You may have done this, you may have been through this class a few times before, but never in the specific form you're in right now. And so we plod on, and we continue to bring ourselves back to what we know when things get iffy. And that's not easy when your arm's in the chipper. When flesh is being rendered, or there is a particular emotional pain which is even more intense than a rendering of the flesh. And this is when we get stripped. Somebody, I think it was Wayne Dyer, I heard say years ago, he said, if you squeeze an orange, what comes out of it?
Orange juice.
What kind of juice?
Orange juice.
Why does orange juice come out of an orange when you squeeze it? Because that's what's in it, right? So then the question is, when you get squeezed, what comes out? What comes out when we are in the chipper, when we're in the press, when we're in the emotional night of hell? What comes out of us? What comes out of us when we get challenged?
Usually swear words.
Swear words. Well, whatever comes out of us is what's in our hearts. There's a red type passage in one of the Gospels where Yeshua is saying, because he's been admonished by the Pharisees about how the sloppy, hygienic habits of his boys, they're not washing their hands right before they eat, and they're going to defile their food and all of this. And he says it's not what goes into a person's mouth that defiles them, but what comes out. Because what goes in, what's not good about that, gets washed away in the draft. But what comes out is indicative of what's in their heart. So, the good news is when stuff comes out of our mouth that we then look at some point in time and go, the horror. What just came out of my mouth? That's an important road sign. That's spirit. When you have that realization, that's spirit shaking you by the shoulders, waking you up and going, dude, do you know what you're carrying around? Listen, you just heard. What you just heard is what you're carrying. Can't solve problems you don't know you have. Can't make changes when you don't know it's necessary or desirable. So when we discover what we're carrying in our hearts, based on listening to what we say and examining, being aware of the kinds of emotional responses that we have in certain situations. And in some situations, it's the situation keeps repeating. Different faces, different time of day, different season of the year, but the energetic of the situation is identical to situations you've been in time and time and time again. And what is the emotional response? What is the verbal response? It's always the same. It never changes until we grab a hold of it and say, you know what? This is not serving me. Now, we could sit here all day long and preach moral value, but there are plenty of churches out there doing that. Don't need to preach moral value. But we can talk science. Being spirit being in a body is a challenge. It's what we're here to master. Driving this rent-a-car through this unpredictable video game we call reality. And we keep, the good news is, it's in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, it's kind of like, remember bumper cars? So any of you, do they still have those? But, you drive around and you smash into somebody and you bounce off and you go in another direction. Well, usually life gives us a few of those before it amps up the consequences. But there's a piece of science that really speaks to the why. Why spiritual striving? Why consciousness? Why spiritual practice? Because it has to do with our ability to navigate and keep these vehicles in good shape while we navigate them through this maze we call reality, so that we can survive long enough to learn what we came here to learn and to create what we came here to create. Carolyn Myss says, your biography becomes your biology. And there's another cat that I'm enamored of, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who used to teach biochemistry in the medical college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's now become a spokesman, that we call him the godfather of epigenetics. And we all know about genetics because we had this multi-billion-dollar project corporately funded during the 1990s called the Human Genome Project, where we learned everything there is to know about our genome, our genetics, and how our genetics dictate our physical reality. If you have this gene, and you have this gene, and you have this gene, you're going to get this disease, or you're going to have this disability, or this is waiting for you around the corner. And it got so bad that women were being asked to sacrifice body parts when there was no pathology in order to prevent any pathology that might develop from what we see from this gene profile. Dr. Bruce Lipton was doing research here at the same time. And his research was getting results that were slightly different than what the Genome Project was reporting. And when the Human Genome Project came out, they listed about 90 to 95% of our genetic material as junk DNA. Why is it junk? Because they couldn't figure out what it did. Therefore, it must be junk, right? Hubris of science. There's a lot of information that we get from our ancestors through our genes, and it's not all just physical characteristics. There are all sorts of conceptual and experiential memes that come through those genes as well. But there's something else that happens above the level of genes, epigenetics. And that's that these genes, the gene switches, respond to command genes and to biochemistry. The chemical content of our blood determines when those genes will switch on and when they'll switch off. Which genes switch on and what combination they switch on, and all of that, in many cases, is determined by the biochemistry of the blood, the chemistry of the blood. The blood is the only thing that touches every cell in the body. Not every cell is on the surface of the skin. Not every cell gets connected to a nerve ending. But every cell gets blood. And every cell has in it hundreds of genes. And the genes are basically architectural drawings for proteins. And the cells are intelligent. They get to decide which gene drawings they're going to pull out of the drawer and which proteins they're going to produce. How do they know? How do they know which ones? They read their environment. What's their environment? The blood. Here's what Bruce says, Bruce Lipton. Science has recently, and this is a blog that he did July 6th, which is 2 weeks ago. Science has recently illuminated the molecular pathway by which the nervous system translates consciousness into blood chemistry, which in turn directly shapes the epigenetic fate of our cells. These cellular mechanisms represent the molecular master switches through which thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs create the conditions of our body and life experiences. So, I'm at work the other day. Not really. I'm making this. This is a story I'm making up. Okay, I'm at work the other day, and the boss comes through, and she throws me a dirty look. Oh, crap. That means the boss must be angry with me. And then, in my subconscious, I'm carrying this meme, which comes from my ancestors, that is fed by the mass consciousness and the parental training that I grew up with, that says, if I don't have a job, if I lose my job, I'm going to perish. If I lose my job, I won't be able to pay my rent. If I can't pay my rent, I'll be out on the street. If I'm out on the street, something bad's going to happen to me, I'll die. Now, this is not happening consciously, it's happening subconsciously. And so what happens when I'm in a life or death situation? My adrenals fire. Adrenaline surging through the bloodstream. Now the cells, there's a klaxon going on. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. We're under attack. So put up the shields. What happens when the shields go up? Can't fire the phasers. We're in defensive mode. The blood goes to the muscles instead of to the brain. On and on and on. And the cells stop producing the proteins that they've been producing, and they go into shutdown defensive mode. Now, the boss had indigestion, was what really was going on, but we are, as somebody said earlier, we are meaning makers. We are machines that make meaning out of everything. Everything that happens to us, we either totally ignore or we have some interpretation of the meaning of that event. and what it means to me. What does it mean to me? And it could have absolutely nothing to do with me, but I'm a machine that makes it have meaning for me. And so I'm going to make something up. Because I know some stuff. I know how life works. I've been around a long time. I've been bruised, I've been beaten, I've been broken. And all of those beatings and bruises and breakings gave me some knowing. And I know about life. And I know what it means when the boss gives me a dirty look. So don't try to tell me otherwise. We know some stuff. And all the stuff we know builds walls that funnel our experience so that it's always congruent with what we know about reality and about life. And stuff that we are exposed to that is in direct contradiction to what we know, we will not remember because we won't register it. We won't record it. We edit that out subconsciously. So we're having these subconscious, these reactions based on the interpretation we are giving, the meaning we're assigning to the events of our lives. And those interpretations are then triggering the endocrine system to pump certain chemicals into the blood, which are then informing the cells of what's going on, and the cells then make decisions about what to do and what not to do, and which genes to switch on and which genes to switch off based on that information. So, what is the value then of truth? Not the stuff I think I know. Because the stuff I think I know isn't always true. Now that just might be for me. I don't know if any of you have that experience, that there's something you absolutely know, for sure, absolutely. And then all of a sudden you get slapped upside the head with the reality of, oh my God, I was wrong. Ever happen to you? No. Half the time. Well, you're well on your way then to becoming a fully realized being. Because when fully realized means we come to the realization that all the stuff that we know is just made up, most of it. And it's in the way, most of it. It's in the way of our freedom. It's in the way of our power. It's in the way of our passion. It's in the way of our potency as humans. And so, for many teachers, the spiritual path is a path of rooting out, weeding. Sally, you've been hitting the bottle again, haven't you? It's okay. Gram is better than a dam. Truth. What is truth? Well, according to my Hindu brethren, truth is Sat. S-A-T. Truth leads us from unreality into reality, a profound and sacred presence. Truth is realized through practicing true awareness, surrendering preferences, desires, biases, prejudices, self-deceit, conceit, pride, fear, and doubt. Surrendering to truth. Surrender. We are taught as humans that the worst thing one of the worst things that we can do is not know. We go to school and they say, and they call on you, and they go, Gene, oh shit, what is the square root of 69? And in Spanish class, the first two words I learned to say were no sé. I don't know. That's not acceptable in school. If you don't know, you're going to get snickered at. There used to be a thing called a dunce cap. They would put you in the corner and you wear the dunce cap so everybody in the class could see you were an idiot because you didn't know. So we're trained. It's beaten into us. We have to know. In third grade, Mrs. Bursan, I'll never forget her. God bless her soul. She was my third grade and sixth grade teacher. She was a retired WAC drill sergeant. Women's Army Corps. And she would take us out in the hallway, one at a time. And you had to recite your multiplication and division tables. And God help you if you couldn't. She'd be in jail today. But then she was a gold star teacher. One of the best teachers I ever had, because I was scared not to know. Absolutely. If I didn't know, I'd make something up. It sounded like it knew. I still do that. I tell people, is that true? I said, if I'm saying it and it sounds reasonable and true, I'm probably making it up. If it sounds unbelievable and wild, it's true. We make stuff up and substitute that for what we think we're supposed to know that we don't know. Instead of just going, you know what? I don't know. The 3 hardest words sometimes for folks to say, I don't know. And boy, you want to get me in a tizzy? Ask me a series of questions where I have to go, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. By the 4th, I don't know, I'm starting to do a meltdown. Because it's so contrary to all my conditioning and all the rewards I've ever received. When I was trying to impress my father as a little kid, nothing worked. I raised my hand. She called to me. I gave her the answer. She was, that's very good, Gene. Oh, I got love. I got kindness. I got a smile. I got a light in her eyes because I knew. Well, by golly, I'm going to continue to know. So this is a very hard thing to give up in honor of truth, because most of what we know is stories that we make up about things that happen to us or things that we're afraid are going to happen to us. We make up stories. And the stories are what we carry with us, and the stories are then what inform our emotions when something similar happens, because the story goes, when you smell smoke, that means there's fire, which means you could die. That's why when horses smell, if they've been in a barn fire, if they ever smell smoke again, they often panic. We do the same thing. We do the same thing based on a facial expression. When I was in 5th grade, Jimmy Stidd had a certain facial expression right before he walloped me one. So now every time I see that facial expression on anybody, I immediately begin to tense up and my adrenals start to fire. Because we're really good at that. This is one of the most atavistic characteristics we have, is the ability to discern intent from another human being based on their facial expressions and body language. But you see, that's conditioning. And the conditioning is going to dictate, once we are operating in a conditioned state, we're going to continue to have the same experiences and the same outcomes as we've always had. Because that's what the conditioned state leads us to. It's only when we can break the conditioning, and the only way that I have found that works to break the conditioning is an active state of surrender. An active state of surrender to truth. To something that knows, something bigger than Gene. Now, we can sit here all day and argue theology. You could say that's God. You could say that's the creative source of the universe. You could say that's my higher self. You could say that's my multidimensional self. You can call it all kinds of things. You can look at it from all kinds of angles. But the fact is, truth is available. But it's only available when we stop knowing. You can't put new wine in old skins, Yeshua said. You can't put water in a glass that's already full. Glass is not half full, it's completely full and overflowing with the stuff I know. So how can I put new stuff in there? I have to empty the glass. And emptying the glass means surrendering to that which knows. How do you find that which knows? You find it in the quiet of the interior. You find it in that sense of peace that comes through a practice of quiet. Sat, truth. Chit, consciousness. The truth of consciousness. When I'm not thinking about it, when I'm merely observing it, I become consciousness. Consciousness is that which observes, is that which experiences. It's not that which figures out. That which figures out is the handy-dandy portable computer. That's the knowing part. And it figures things out based on what it thinks it already knows, so that it can reconcile what it's now experiencing with what it already knows. Sat, truth. Chit, consciousness. Ananda, bliss. Sat, Chit, Ananda. In the truth that makes itself available through pure consciousness leads to a state of bliss. What happens in a state of bliss? What messages are the cells getting in a state of bliss? What's the chemical content of the blood in a state of bliss? Shields are down, baby. Fire the phasers. We're good to go. Make your proteins. Build something. Reproduce. It's all good. It's healthy. It's safe. It's powerful. It's okay. This is personal power. This is the power we came here to discover. This is the path to accessing grace. And that's the beauty of surrender, because we don't have to build it from the ground up. Grace is always present. Grace is that quality of consciousness that strives for good, that always leads us to and surrounds us with and fills us with good. That's why Paul said God is love. He's talking about that aspect of the divine which we call grace, which is always present. But we are walling it away from us because of all the stuff we know. I tell you, the world's in a lousy place. We got trouble, my friends. We got trouble right here in River City. It starts with T and it rhymes with P and it stands for politics. It's real easy to get up every morning, switch on your Huffington Post, and just go into a huff. That's why it's perfectly named. They did what? He said what? What are they doing now? Oh my God! What message are the cells getting now? What's the chemical content of the blood there? What are we doing to our own physical health when we go down that road, which is so easy to go down, and I'm speaking for myself right now. So easy to go down. So the practice of coming into Satchitananda, the practice is a practice of peace, a practice of positivity, a practice of having some awareness of what thoughts and emotions you are experiencing, the very state of being aware of, the very state of observation. The quantum mechanics tell us. You know, there are quantum mechanics. I tried to take my car to one, but he said he wasn't sure the car was really there. The quantum mechanics of this is that the state of observation changes the phenomenon. So the very act of separating ourselves from being blindly and 100% the experiencer of the events of our lives, being so immersed in the character, the persona, the personality, the thing with my name and birthday on it, and story, that I'm being ping-ponged around like a giant pachinko machine. Japanese for pinball. And so my emotions are all over the board, and my blood chemistry keeps changing, and the cells get confused. And when cells get sufficiently confused, by the constantly changing information they're getting, at some point, you know what cells start to do? They start to say, screw this, I'll just figure it out myself. And they go rogue. And we all know what happens when that starts. There is a perfect melody that we can tune into, through surrender, through practice, through just being quiet and observing ourselves as people operating this machine, navigating through this maze we call Earth, this series of events we call life. And when we can get that micron of separation so that we can observe as we are experiencing, we begin to take some of the edge off the experience, and it gives us the opportunity then to access consciousness, and through consciousness to access truth. And when truth and consciousness are awake in us, we come into a state of ananda. We come into peak experience. We come into that elegant state of biochemistry that we were developed to have. And the cool part about it is we're contagious. We are contagious. We have this field of energy that has certain aspects to it and certain frequencies that we're emitting. And every time we come into contact or within range of other human beings, their energy fields get impacted by our energy fields. And you might say, well, then my energy field's being impacted by everybody's energy field that I'm with. Exactly. Even more reason to spend the time to practice the observation, the witnessing, the quiet, the peace that allows for truth and consciousness to bring you into this state of surrender and openness so that grace can flow through you and you can have the life that is not only the life that you really came here to live, you can have the life that the people around you are going to be positively affected by. That's how powerful we are. That's the potential we have. Sat Chit Ananda. The combination of truth and consciousness. When we give up what we know, when we begin to witness our experience, we come into a state of grace. And in that state of grace, our cells are getting the message, dance, it's time to dance. The music is playing, everybody's happy, it's time to rock and roll. So create powerfully, create beautifully. And this is how we create beauty in the world, by being beauty. And it's a self-help project. It's a home construction job. It's an inside job. And so the koan that I will leave you with around this is, what you are looking for is what you are looking with.